time to start another monthly wrap-up reading vlog. Today is just a day of like doing everything in the house. So we vacuumed the floors, we're mopping, we did a huge grocery haul. I think my partner's planning to do some like meal prepping and like meal prepping is the word. Got like rounds of laundry on the go. Tidied every surface except for like our room so far. I'm gonna fold some baby clothes and update you on reading. So it's actually been a pretty rough start to November. The toddler and I both were sick this week. I'm still feeling it a little bit. She was home from daycare all week, so even though I was sick, it's like full-time taking care of her also, and not that much reading happened, but I did watch a lot of Disney movies, so that was nice. But I did manage to finish the Silverblood Promise, which I did a full review on. You can check out if you'd like to hear more in-depth thoughts on that one. Ultimately, it did not work for me, but not in like a really negative way. It was more just that I did not really like the main character, Lucan. And I felt like his personality was so pervasive on the page, which could be a really good thing, but because I didn't get on with it, it was really, really hard to separate his personality and like the things that I didn't like about him and all of the choices that he was making and how that impacted the plot, and just like basically like every element of the book was really hard to separate from his personality. And so it made it kind of a frustrating read because I wasn't getting on with the main character, and it was hard also to review because I couldn't separate what I thought about the writing from just the internal, I mean, it's third person, but like from the perspective of that character who was really frustrating to me. This is a book following Lucan Cordova, who is a disgraced nobleman. He's kind of down on his luck. He makes a big mistake when he's at like this academy that gets him kicked out of school, disgraced like publicly within his city. It also like further destitutes his family's fortune because the mistake winds up costing his family some money. All this to say that we are catching up with Lucan a few years later, and he's just kind of been like hanging around, you know, gambling, drinking, moving from city, trying not to stay anywhere too long. And his steward, or the steward of his family, catches up with him to inform him that his father has been recently murdered, and left a message, a 3-word message, one of which, one of those words was his name, and it seems to direct him in the direction of a particular city. There's definitely some like tough feelings because his father and he have been estranged since that big fallout. So he has some unresolved feelings about that, as like to like having never made up, even though he always intended to. He never went back, they never worked it out, but he also has some like ongoing poor relationship with his father prior to that, after the death of his mom. So definitely like complicated feelings around grief. However, I don't feel like we spent a ton of time on grief and working through that. Maybe over the course of the series, as we learn more about what was going on with the dad, perhaps it'll force like more conversations, more internal thoughts about that, but I wouldn't say it was like heavy on the grief processing in this particular book. What it is though is the start of a murder mystery to figure out what got his father killed. He travels to this city where he gets a little helper street urchin named Flea, who is the gem of this book. And the two try to, you know, follow leads as they try to figure out what happened, but they quickly get, of course, wound up into local politics, like uncovering a local conspiracy. He gets on the bad side of like every single person in the city, and of course, like in a very foreshadowing way at the beginning of the book, like, oh, wouldn't want to go there, wouldn't want to get on the bad side of this guy, wouldn't want to, you know, wind up pissing off the criminal underbelly of this city. And of course, he does all of those things. I said in my review that Lucan has that particular skill set of the ability to piss off every single person that he comes into contact with, and I feel pretty strongly about that. That was the one thing that he couldn't let anything go. He would be getting help from people, and he would maybe carry like a little bit more of the risk, but at the same time, like, he had no other leads. He feels passionately about figuring out what happens to his father, this one person that he's making a shared deal with. Really, all he has to do is share the information. They're like helping him out, and he has a little bit more of the risk, and he like couldn't let go of the fact that he was carrying more of the risk. It's like, well, what's your other plan then? How are you gonna find out what happened to your dad without this? Like, this is the only way you could do this. This has to be. He couldn't let anything go, and he was aggressive and confrontational to like everyone, while simultaneously then, like on the opposite end of the spectrum, he would try to get out of things by being really, really charming in some situations. So I didn't get on with him. I really like the dynamic between him and the street urchin Flea. There's definitely an additional person that's going to be like in the mix that for this book they were added in, like they joined the group, let's say, a little bit too late in the book to have it make like a big impact. But the person, like, there's like 3 people on the cover for the second book. So I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic with 3 people moving forward, but it wasn't that way just yet. But Lucan and Flea were really, really great. So if you like that, like, not actually blood related, but like big brother, little sister kind of ribbing, slowly coming to care for somebody that you have like really no stakes or interest in. If you like that dynamic, this did a really good job of that. It is very fast-paced, it's very action-packed. A lot of things happen in this book. I listened to the audio and it was totally a serviceable audio. And the world and the politics are not too complicated to make audiobook listening difficult, which I know can be definitely a consideration with fantasy and sci-fi books. So that was the Silverblood Promise. And again, you can check out my review if you would like to hear more, or if you just want to support the channel a little bit. I have officially started my Kindle Unlimited trial. I'm not taking any more ebooks out from the library. I have instead picked up Along the Razor's Edge by Rob J. Hayes. This is one of my 24 books to read in 2024. And this is a new author that I wanted to try. I will say that it is not coming off the page for me. The writing is not particularly to my taste. It is a story about Eskara, who was a sorceress captured in a war. She was very young though, and she's now in this place called the Pit, which is just like senseless rock digging to no end. And she's telling us this story from the future. And usually that's a setup that I like, but the way that she's telling the story from the future is odd. Everything is, if only I had talked to that person, if only I had learned a little bit more about that person, everything would be different. And not in like a rambly, meandering kind of way, but in a very like, these 2 phrases over and over again once a chapter about like, if only I had talked to that person, if only I had told that person a little bit more about me, if only I had done this. And almost in a little bit of a clunky way. I'm not sure where this book falls in Rob J. Hayes' like publication order. Maybe it's his debut, in which case, you know, I'm always you should be forgiving with writing in a debut. I'm not putting it down yet, but I will say I'm not racing through it. And with like a bit of a time crunch on like a trial sort of period, I might pivot. That could mean picking up the sort of Kaigen while still having Along the Razor's Edge like open and just sort of like seeing if the other one jumps off the page a little bit more quickly to me. But also could mean trying another Rob J. Hayes book. I have always also been interested in his, I think he has like a series of novellas that are like set within the same world. So I think that's Never Die. I've also been interested in picking up that. So I could potentially read that instead and still have it like, be like, okay, Along the Razor's Edge, not right now, but maybe this other thing instead, to also get that priority. Like, I didn't have to read Along the Razor's Edge. I wanted to read a book by Rob J. Hayes for that priority checklist. So let me know if you have read either or both Never Die or Along the Razor's Edge, which, I mean, you're getting this after the fact. You're going to find out what I did. But what would you have recommended had you seen this in time to tell me? I did pick up, when I finished the Silverblood Promise, I no longer had an audiobook to listen to, which I do enjoy having for like walks with the dog and running errands and things like that. So I wound up picking up On the Same Page, which is a random sapphic contemporary romance book that I think I heard about on Chandler Ainsley's channel. In like a very one-off mention, here's a great, I didn't like this particular friends to lovers sapphic romance, but I did like this other one. And I was like, sure, that sounds good, because I'm always looking for more sapphic romances to try out. And I'm about 50% of the way in, and I'll say I was shocked that I am only at the 50% mark, because I felt like I was a lot further along. And it's fine, it's totally fine. I just don't know, it's just not like a new favorite. So I will probably continue it, but if an audiobook at the library, if a different audiobook came up at the library, I would probably also pick that up. We talked last time about maybe listening to The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy if I could, and my library does not have an audiobook copy for that. They only have the ebook, and it's like a several month waiting list for it. So I don't think I'm going to be rereading that book anytime soon. Other Kindle Unlimited books that I have my eye on are definitely Reign and Ruin or Quicksilver. Those are likely to be the first Romantasy books that I pick up. There's another one that I think was on my lower priority list that after I published that video, Maria reminded me that there was one on there. I forget what it had something to do with prison. That was one that reminded her of Juliet Marillier or maybe of Seven Waters. So I could also peruse that. But definitely I think that Reign and Ruin or Quicksilver are my like top priority romantasy books to read. But I also really want to read The Fall Is All There Is, or The Fall Is All That There Is. I'll pop it up by C.M. Kaplan. And I just feel like this reads, like the synopsis reads really, really quirky and different. And I feel like that could potentially be the right mood for me in this moment. So that is my thoughts. That's where we're at. That is November. I'm done my folding. It was fortunately a very small amount of clothes to fold. I'm going to get back to all of the other tidying and things that I have on my list for today. And I will see you in our next check-in. November, Saturday morning. The toddler ended up coming home early yesterday from daycare. She is sick again, so we had like 1 week off. I am still personally getting over the congestion that we had the week prior, and she is sick again. She actually has a little bit of fever. So kind of messed up my plans for yesterday when I wanted to do this fill in, but here we are today. Plans for the weekend. A friend of mine is in town for yesterday and today, so she came down to Copenhagen yesterday for work stuff. She lives in the city where we used to live in Denmark before Copenhagen. So she was down yesterday for work, stayed with family last night, and today we're gonna go on like a pastry tour of Copenhagen, which we always do whenever she's in town. My like 2 cents, my like one suggestion if you are ever visiting Copenhagen, if you come here, first off, like hit me up, let me know that you're coming, whether that's tips or you want to like meet up for like a coffee and book tour, let's do that. But secondly, or like my main suggestion is make coffee at home, whether that's like your hotel or your Airbnb or your hostel, whatever, have coffee there, but buy pastries out. It is so worth it to dedicate a little bit of your budget because they're extremely expensive pastries, but they are worth every penny. So buy pastries out, make coffee at home. It's also outrageously expensive and not worth it in very small quantities. Pastries though, worth it. So we're gonna go on a little bit of a pastry tour hunt of Copenhagen today. We were maybe gonna go to Tivoli as well, which is the Europe's oldest amusement park, which is located right in the center of Copenhagen. But I think she went yesterday and it's also like a little bit rainy and dreary, and also the toddler is sick. So I think we'll probably pass on that for today. And then reading update, I have been picking up a lot of things, but I'm actually finding that I'm in like a really particular reading mood, or I'm feeling like more like a mood reader. I generally am, but I'm feeling like that's more so important right now for me compared to previously. So when we last checked in, I had picked up Along the Razor's Edge, and I was thinking about not continuing, and so far I have not. So I don't think I've made any progress in that since. I have not yet decided whether or not I'm going to try it again before the end of the year or try a different Rob J. Hayes book. So just kind of holding on that priority read one. And I did wind up picking up The Sword of Kaigen, which I am really, really enjoying. I'm about 30% of the way in, and I do really like it. I would say that it is like an objectively very good quality book. I think for me, I need a little bit more closeness with the characters, so we'll see what happens in the remainder of the book. But so far it's not like new favorite status, although it is like objectively very, very good. And I am very intrigued about the conversations that we're having about motherhood and propaganda and all of that. The last time that I checked in, I was listening to On the Same Page, a contemporary sapphic romance, and it's just a really long romance. Like, it was only at the 50% mark, and it's not that I wasn't feeling it, it's just that like it maybe wasn't the right mood, and I only picked it up because a contemporary romance book is a really easy thing to pick up for me audio-wise when I don't have anything else available to me for audiobooks. So I was really like less committed to finishing the book and more just like, should I continue just for the sake of having something to listen to on walks and doing errands? And then I remembered that my Everend subscription was back on again. I had taken a bit of a break from it, and I hadn't been listening or doing anything with Everend, so I was paying for it and not doing anything. So I picked up With Blood Upon the Sand, which is the second book in the Shattered Sands series. The first book is The 12 Kings in Sherikai, which I read and really, really loved earlier this year. So I was starting to listen to this audiobook, and I just think that it's not the right time for me to read this book. It is one that I identified on my end of the year tag video as being like a book that like one of the 3 books that I wanted to finish before the end of the year. And I think that that's still a possibility, but I would say that it's not right for the mood that I'm in right now. I realized how much I have forgotten about just like names and really specific political things, like names especially though, and characters. Like I had totally forgotten about this one POV character if I was like thinking about it. As soon as they went to his perspective, I was like, oh yeah, this guy, like, but I had totally forgotten. So it was requiring a little bit more mental capacity to think about like, who was this again? What did they do? Where did we end up with that storyline? How does she know that this person is in on blank? Like I was having to think a little bit more than what I'm in the mood for right now. So I was still listening to that when I got a text from Taylor thanking me for the Murderbot recommendation for a like late night, overnight, middle of the night nursing or feeding the baby when you have a newborn audiobook, which I had listened to the first Muderbot Diaries when I had a newborn. That reminded me that I could still listen to those ones. I'm going to put the With Blood Upon the Sands down again. So that's like, I'm kind of picking up and putting down a lot right now, to be honest. But I put that down, and I am instead still using Everend though. I'm listening on in the Muderbot Diaries. So I listened to and finished the second one, Artificial Condition, I believe. And I'm already continuing on and listening to the third book because I think that one was like yesterday and the day before maybe is when I picked that up and finished it. Let me just double check that that is everything. Okay, yeah, that's all of the things that I have like picked up and put down and finished since I last checked in. So let's talk about Artificial Condition, which I actually did finish. So this is the second novella in the Muderbot Diaries series. I picked up the first one last fall when I had a newborn, and it was a really great audiobook for like listening to in the middle of the night when you're doing feedings and just whatever. So I remember saying that I thought it was like really, really great and I enjoyed it, but that I had a feeling everybody loved this series because of the main character, Murderbot. And that while I thought Murderbot was great, I wasn't like over the moon for that character just yet. And then I had a feeling like I was missing out on that sensation a lot of like, oh, I love this because I hadn't quite clicked with Murderbot yet. This is a series where we are following an artificial, like an AI security bot who calls themselves Murderbot, who have figured out how to hack their own system so that they now sort of actually have like control and they don't just have to follow orders. And they're like a security robot that the company like leases out to various other companies for security detail type things. And in the first book, we were following Murderbot on, we're like just kind of like getting into this world, following Murderbot on like one of their missions with a particular group of people. And obviously I'm not going to say how that ends, but it is this second book, Artificial Condition, where I became sold on Murderbot as a beloved character. I feel like we got a little bit more into their emotions, or maybe just the emotions that they were experiencing in this second book. I connected with a little bit more, I'm not sure, but I really, really enjoyed it. I also really loved Art, who was a whole research transport, I think is what that stood for. And it is the name that Murderbot gives to this like ship entity that they are traveling on. So they like convince this ship, which is how they get around. They like hack into like different
systems and different like bots and all these things and convince them to like give them favors and etc. So they convince this transport bot to hitch a ride because they're on a mission. Then it turns out that this bot is like a lot more intelligent than they first thought, and the two kind of have like an interesting, like a really fun dynamic. I thought that like element of these two getting to know each other in this book and Murderbot like interacting with other, I don't think the transports are artificial intelligence. I guess they would be. I guess like Murderbot interacting with other beings within this world in a new different ways than what they have previously experienced in the past. I feel like that is like a beautiful element of this series that I'm also getting more of in book number 3 or novella number 3. So I just really loved art. There was like a little like montage of them watching shows together, which is a big thing that Murderbot does. Like they just like, they don't want to be doing their job. They just want to be like watching and consuming media. So there's like a montage of, while they're traveling to wherever they're going, of Murderbot and Art watching shows together and like seeing Art's reactions to different elements of the shows that they are watching, and Murderbot's perception of that was just a beautiful, hilarious little montage. Like it was so lovely and cozy. I think I'm maybe a little bit more in the mood for cozy things right now. That could definitely be the case, or at least like low processing things where I have like a little bit less processing that I have to do mentally. But anyway, I really loved that one. I liked that Murderbot is interacting with both humans and other technological beings, I guess you could say, in new and interesting ways, and exploring what they want out of their life. Murderbot as a character is now, I get it now. I get why everyone loves them so much, because book 2 is where that really sold it for me, and I'm hooked now. What I don't want to do though is overdo it, so I immediately picked up the third one, almost, maybe not right away, but almost right away, like within a few hours. So I think I'm gonna call it though on book 3 and put a little bit of space, and like maybe I now listen to like one Murderbot novella. I know there are full-length novels as well in the series, but maybe I listen to like max 1 a month for the next little while until I'm like all caught up, because I don't want to consume too much and have them like blend into each other, and I don't want to get bored of it. So I would like to keep progressively working forward. I just don't want to do it 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 1. You know what I mean? When I get a little bit further along in the Sword of Kaigen, I might also pick up another Kindle Unlimited ebook. I'm not sure. I don't have a ton of reading time right now. I'm also like really pushing with the job search stuff. But if I were to pick up something next, it would either be Reign of Ruin, I've decided, or The Fall Is All There Is. I have heard a lot more people talking about Reign of Ruin lately, and even though I was already sold on reading that, I feel like even more committed to reading that particular book. So I would really like to get to that one. Not only just because of the book itself, but I like that it is a series of romantasy where we're following different couples from book to book. Like, I appreciate that setup. So that makes me want to get into that series even more. And then The Fall Is All There Is, I just feel like is that like quirky, has that quirky element that I would like to read. You can hear, I don't think I said that much about it in my Kindle Unlimited TBR. You can always check that video out if you're interested to see, or if you didn't watch that video and you're interested to see like what Kindle Unlimited books I have my eye on. This one is a self or indie pub book by the author C.M. Kaplan that is about, I think, either a triplet or a quadruplet. But anyway, this guy his father dies, and now like one of his siblings is going to maneuver to take over the realm, and the synopsis is just written in like a very interesting way where it's like, family, you know, like, and I don't think he like likes all of his siblings. I feel like I'm both in the mood for cozy as well as quirky. So if you know any cozy, quirky books, for me, that recommendation would be The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy right now. I'm like on a huge kick that's like the perfect quirky. I wish I could have appreciated the quirkiness of that book more when I first read it, but that is the mood that I'm in. So those are the 2 books that I'm likely to go to next. Not sure audiobook wise, as I am going to be done this 3rd Murderbot one pretty soon, so I'll have to do some looking around to see what the right audiobook pickup for me would be next. Maybe I'll double check my priorities for the year, but I don't feel like there are any priorities that I could do in audio on Everend. So I'll just double check. Otherwise, this past week, I have just been like really pushing the job searching. For any of you who are watching who might also be on like a job searching, career changing journey, you know, I'm right there with you. And just like, big sigh, not easy, both like emotionally and like physically. Cover letters, why? You know, why? Just have me in for an interview and I will convince you in person. Yeah, I just had like a couple like hits this week with that didn't feel great, and it's just like a big grind overall, and I just like really need a new job, let's say. So feeling the job search woes a little bit this week. So if you can commiserate with me on that, put it down in the comments. I would love to commiserate together. But anyway, my friend Elizabeth is on her way over, so I'm gonna finish getting ready for my pastry tour. It has been a minute since I checked in last. I feel like it's been a couple weeks actually. So I have been reading a ton. I don't have all the time. You can see I'm actually out on a walk, obviously, with Poppy. So I'm only going to update you on the books that I have a chance to. I have finished 4 things since I last checked in, and I have picked up and put down a couple, and I am definitely like very close to finishing another book. So this is just going to be a minor update, and then I'll keep going the next time I have a chance to sit down. So when I last checked in, I think I was reading Rogue Protocol, the 3rd novella in the Murderbot series. Maybe this was a bad idea. But anyway, I finished that. I loved it. I loved it so much. Mickey, why? Oh, that was good. Again, the 3rd one in the Muderbot Diaries, I can't say too much. But in this one, let's say Murderbot has now decided in terms of like what they're up to. They're trying to get some information and some data for the people that they feel some sense of loyalty to. And their journey has overlapped with like another crew of people who are doing some things. I enjoy that element of what's happening with Murderbot's story, where they are sort of getting sucked into, almost against their will, helping other people. And this is really changing their overall perception of how people and artificial intelligence units can interact, and the ways that they could be treated by humans. And I'm enjoying that storyline. I also feel like it's been really interesting to have, like, we had like Art in the 2nd novella, and now Mickey, who is he's like a bot, like a research bot in this current one, that is giving Murderbot more opportunities to interact with like other technological beings in profound ways. There were a couple moments in this book where Mickey would say something, or something would be revealed, or someone would say something that Murderbot would then need to like take themselves into like seclusion to process emotions, or like to have emotions. And it's so simple, the writing. It's a novella that's not, and it's straightforward, but just like that simplicity of like that one line, like after which I needed to take myself into my closet to have some emotions. It's just like so profound in the moment. I'm thoroughly loving this series. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break. Right after I finished that, I think I said that I didn't have any more audiobooks coming up, and then suddenly the audiobook for A Sorceress Comes to Call became available at the library, so I was able to take that out, and I listened to that audiobook as well, just finishing up my thought on she's like directly behind my head. There we go. Just finishing up my thought process on taking a break from Murderbot. So I'm going to be alternating my subscriptions with Everend and Kindle Unlimited, I've decided, so that I can get a little bit of both. Oh, there's another dog. Poppy! Here. Okay, back home. I'm gonna alternate my Everend and Kindle Unlimited subscriptions, not necessarily every other month, but maybe like 2 or 3 months here, 2 or 3 months there, so that I can sort of like get more broad spectrum access to books, and not have to carry both of those subscriptions every single month if I'm not using them. So that is where, so I'm gonna take a couple months off of Muderbot Diaries because I do use Everend to get those audiobooks. Going from there, I did listen to A Sorceress Comes to Call by Kingfisher. This was definitely something that I was anticipating. It was on a list, so I get like, intentional reading check marks for that. I did really, really enjoy this. This is a very loose Goose Girl retelling. I would say that the Goose Girl retelling elements were very minor in how she fit that into the story, I guess. The sorceress, who is the evil mom, evil sorceress mom of one of our main characters, whose name I've already forgotten. Isn't that horrible? Her mother is a sorceress and is definitely abusive and manipulative and emotionally neglectful, and uses her magic to control her daughter in pretty significant ways. And at the start of the book, they are leaving town. She's sort of like, the situation with her current benefactor has come to an end. She finds a way to, insert herself into this squire's household in an attempt to try to get him to propose. The squire's sister is a very intelligent person and is very aware of what's outside of the sorceress elements. She knows what's up with Lady Evangeline, let's say. The little girl, the 14-year-old girl, then we get her perspective as she is very terrified, both of her mother, but also like what could potentially happen. She knows how dangerous her mother can be, and she knows what her mom has the potential of doing with the magic. We also get the perspective of Hester, who I do remember because she is for sure one of my new favorite characters of all time. Amazing. I love Hester so much. Her perspective was so fun to read with, and that is the sister who is trying to interfere with the sorceress, wooing her brother. So I thought this was really interesting because it was both sort of this little girl trying to not do things that would upset her mother, like trying to live within both guessing what it is that the mom wants when she has no idea. She has no idea what kind of answer the mom might want. And so she's always trying to guess and navigate how to exist within the world so as not to cause an issue with the mother. I feel like I'm like even more now reflecting on that in this moment that I was so in when I read it, and realizing how well that was done, how clear that was. But also then her seeing the potential of her mother to hurt other people and not knowing how best to approach that situation. It is a surprisingly cozy book considering the content that we are dealing with. And that is something that Kingfisher does tend to do really well. She's able to highlight those serious topics, like to broach these topics and to do so in a very informed and subtle way while still being lighthearted and still giving the reader a sense of coziness and interaction that isn't so heavy with the characters. There were moments at the very beginning of this book where I was like, oh man, I'm gonna cry. This book is gonna make me cry. And I actually didn't, because of the lighthearted, cozy elements that we were able to sort of like work through what was happening. I also feel like to some extent, once the main character is in this household, she is a little bit more protected just by sheer like proximity to other people. But then there is also this inherent situation that I find myself with in T. Kingfisher's books where, yes, she's dealing with the heavy subjects. Yes, she still has this like lighthearted, cozy element. And I appreciate those two things being here. One makes the other one more able, maybe you're more able to look at these things without being totally, without it affecting your day to day. It's not like reading My Dark Vanessa, which is a book that like I'm avoiding reading because I know that will, not that I have any situational experience with that, but it's like an example of a book where it's like, I know that if I pick that up, it is gonna seep into the rest of my day and time into my life while I'm reading that book. Whereas this, because it's lighthearted and cozy, you can still do it and still like go about and have it not like carry that through everything that you're doing. But because of this element, then there's something then missing with T. Kingfisher's books, for me personally, that prevents them from being all-time favorite books. But overall, like, the book is genius. The book is objectively very, very good, and I wish that I had done this closer to having finished that book so that I could more effusively express my praise, because overall it was amazing. It was amazing. If you haven't read this book and you don't think that you will be triggered in a way that you would like to avoid those discussions, then you should definitely pick this book up. It's very good. If you read Nettle and Bone, you're like, I think you should still give this a shot. Okay, so I have a bunch of other stuff that I need to do today. I don't have more time to sit down and continue updating you. I will get on once more before the end of the month, or like at the very beginning of December, to update you, to finish updating you on everything that I'm reading. But before I get back to the rest of my day, just a little like hints and teasers of what's to come. So I have a crazy amount of things on the go right now. I've kind of just been picking up whatever feels right in the moment, and that does not necessarily mean that it'll be a book that I happen to have already been reading. So things are all over the place right now. What I have also finished was The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I've also finished Lady of Darkness. I don't remember the author's last name. And at some point in the past month, or maybe even in October, I'm not sure, at some point I reread, the Soulmate Experiment? Is that what it was called? I'll put it up. Christina Lauren book, which was a reread for me, which is why I don't remember when it was, because like I don't really record rereads very well. Also, what I am currently reading, or what I have open and actively on the go right now, is The Sword of Kaigen, about 50% of the way in. The Fall Is All That There Is, about 20% of the way in. Lady of Shadows, the second book in this like Lady of Darkness series, I'm not actually sure, like probably 75% of the way in. This one is an audiobook I'm currently listening to, and I have to finish this one before the end of the month because I'm using Everend, and that one I'm going to put my Everend subscription on hold for the month of like December and onwards again. So I have to finish that one very, very soon. And then also last night, because like I wasn't feeling any of those other things, I also picked up Reign and Ruin, that I'm like maybe like 5 to 8 to 10% of the way into. So things are a little bit wild. My vibe going into December is just chaos. No set clear plans or like goals for the end of this month. I have to sit down and do some like organizational planning for what content I want to have in December versus January. I feel like end of the year content, there's so many things that you can do, and then I'm always like never sure. I feel like to some extent it feels like missing the boat by doing it in January, but at the same time, I can't do it in December because like I don't have all the stats for you yet. So I feel weird to do too much end of the year stuff in December before I have all of my statistics for the year. But anyway, beside the point, I have to sit down and do some planning. Okay, here we have it. It is December 1st, and I can take a little bit of time to tell you about the remaining books that I finished in the month of November. Personally, I'm feeling very excited about December happening. My reading has been just all over the place, and I'm hoping to like really simplify and pare down what it is I have on the go in the month of December as I sort of like reflect on the past year and hopefully wrap some stuff up and make some new plans for next year. So last time I was able to sit down, I mentioned that I had also finished The Lady of Darkness and 7 Year Slip, and I have since also finished Lady of Shadows. So I'm going to tell you about those remaining books that I finished, as well as what I currently have open and on the go. So I'm going to start with The 7 Year Slip so that I can talk about the first two books in the, I don't know, Lady of Darkness series. This book I absolutely loved. I think it's another like favorite of the year. I feel like I'm getting a lot of favorites of the year last month and this month. But The 7 Year Slip is one that I wasn't expecting anything out of it. I didn't even know if I would like Ashley Poston's style of book. I did think that this was my first book from her, but in fact, I was looking on Everend like other books that they had available from that author on Everend, and I noticed that she was also the author for Geekerella, I think it was called, which is a YA contemporary romance that I read ages and ages ago. So I have in fact read an Ashley Poston book before, but not an adult contemporary book. This is a much more closed door type of type of contemporary romance book, and from the sense that I get, Ashley Poston tends to put like a little bit of like a magical realism spin on her romance books. So in this one, the main character, Clementine, lives in her aunt's old apartment that is magical, and that totally out of the blue, the apartment will transform you to that space 7 years ago. So our main character is going through a bit of a hard time, and she finds herself suddenly when she comes home one day in the same apartment but 7 years prior, when her aunt is traveling and has subletted the apartment to a friend's son of a similar and appropriate age for our main character. And conveniently a similar and appropriate age so that the pairing works both in the then 7 years ago timeline as well as in the now actual timeline. And so we get this a little bit of like a then and now, except for that both timelines are like the now for our main character, as she sort of like falls for this guy 7 years ago and then tries to find him in her real now present timeline as well. It was so interesting. I just like completely ate this book up. I read it all the way through. It had that feeling of reading a book where you like know that there are flaws, but you don't really care because you're having such an amazing experience. It's the kind of book that I finished and wanted to immediately pick up and start reading again. I definitely will at some point add this book to my collection. I made like a small little like, I would love to like sometime get this book comment to my partner, so we'll see what happens. But I just loved it. And to be fair, it does fall into a trope an element for me that I am bothered about, in that like that tends to bother me, in that they don't actually have that much time together, both in the past and in the now, to elicit the types of feelings that we are discussing and having. I wish that she had more instances of her going back 7 years and seeing him more often before meeting him again in the present. I feel like when things start to collide in the present again, she is operating on the knowledge and awareness of like only having the experience that she has so far had with the hero, and has no way of knowing whether or not more she goes back more, whether or not he has seen her more times, because that hasn't happened yet for her, if that makes sense. I hope you know what I mean. So she's operating and saying things to him in the present based on the limited amount of interactions that she knows of, and isn't taking into account the fact that there could have been more. And I was like stressing about that. I remember biking home from work being like very aware that she was operating with this like false sense of knowledge about what has happened for him in the past. And because of that, I was like anticipating a particular type of conflict, and she totally took a different route with the conflict that I really, really enjoyed. I think that if I was putting my like reviewer hat on and breaking this down, the amount of time that they spend together then, like 7 years ago and now, would bother me. And what else would bother me? I wish that she was aware earlier that she didn't have all of the information from the past because it hadn't happened yet for her. So with those two things being left aside, I actually thought this was just like such an amazing book. I really, really loved it. I loved the writing. It is about how we change as people, but also how people change within a partnership. We have a really interesting view of this because our heroine who is viewing it is static in the moment. Like she's experiencing both of these men, like this one man at different times in his life. And so you get this really like a dramatic shift of seeing a potential partner, whatever, however you want to say it, of seeing the then and now kind of elements of a person who is growing and changing, and the idea that if you are with someone for a long period of time, you are going to experience different versions of that person, and that you can love different things about someone as they grow and change, and to be okay with that growth and change, because you yourself too are probably growing and changing, to say it again. Anyway, loved it. Definitely will be checking out other books by that author. Then I read Lady of Darkness and Lady of Shadows. This is a Romantasy series that was on my Kindle Unlimited TBR. However, I happened to find them, the audiobooks, on Everend. So it was really great. I was able to listen to them in that format during a time when I didn't have anything else going on audiobook wise. This, like, to just like not clear the air, but like right out of the gate, like this is uncomfortably close to plagiarism. I don't know what would make this not plagiarism with two of SJM's series. Like it is Throne of Glass in the like in most elements, and like world building elements, and like who our main character is and all of those things. Like it's Throne of Glass with like a sprinkling and a dash of ACOTAR here and there based on like specific scenes, some plot beats, especially with the second book. There were a shocking amount of elements that were so clearly the same, like the almost the exact same, that were honestly really, really shocking. So I actually have chosen not to rate these on, I don't remember if I've registered them on Goodreads yet, but I don't feel comfortable rating them because I don't know how I feel about promoting this book or these books in any way. It is an assassin story where our main character is an assassin, and of course she's like only 18, maybe she's 19 in this book, but it's like she's like not been working for the last year. The love interest is like very obviously Rowan. There's a very obvious Diarmid, like prince character. There's a very obvious like assassin lord owner character. Anyway, she's like living in this lord's house for some reason because she's having a disagreement with her assassin lord. The assassin lord offers her like one last job. The price, like what she will get if she does this job, is the information of who was responsible for her mother's murder when she was a young little girl. Like this first book, Lady of Darkness, is books 1 and 2 of Throne of Glass, and the second book, Lady of Shadows, is like a Heir of Fire, but also A Court of Mist and Fury. So if you're looking for those vibes, this is, she kind of, the author just kind of did exactly those things again in a slightly different world, but using all of the world building that Sarah J. Maas did. It's uncomfortable. This book is very readable, but also very frustrating. That is my experience. The first book is dealing with like so many secrets. It's just like an excessive amount of secrets where the main character is, again, we're in her head and we're like keeping secrets from ourselves, from the reader, for the sake of secrets, and everything is a secret, and that we make reference to all of these secrets, and you can't have this information, you can't have this information. Then you find out the information, you're like, that doesn't seem that significant to have kept that a secret. In the second book, we definitely go into that whole like Selena, and I know like her name's actually not Selena, but like Selena in Throne of Glass, like making all of these plans and keeping everything from everybody else for like no good reason, just because. It's an extremely frustrating reading experience for me because I'm so upset and frustrated at the things that the main character is doing and saying. She is so unnecessarily aggressive and confrontational to everyone around her, especially the love interest at the beginning. I guess I think I'm also frustrated by like even using like, well, yes, like the romantic element is important to this. This is not a good relationship. This is not good communication, and it's not the type of romance or like romantasy that I want to see. I want to see characters who have flaws and who react in knee-jerk ways, sometimes because of their past experiences, but who still try their best to be a good partner through the course of their romantic pairing dynamic, and not whatever it is that this is, because this is just like such unhealthy communication back and forth, whatever. Like it's so overwhelmingly frustrating to read this type of dynamic, and I don't know why that makes it so popcorn readable. I would love to sit down and just like vomit out all of my thoughts and feelings about the series, but I also feel uncomfortable that it's like very obviously plagiarism, and I don't want to give this book more attention than it's already gotten, because I feel uncomfortable about the elements of this. I think I'll leave it there. I definitely have more thoughts and feelings and just random things of being like, that didn't make sense, this didn't make sense, I was upset about this. It's the book that you read like a CW show where there's so much drama and stuff going on that you can't help keep reading because you like kind of want to know what happens, but you're also like angry and frustrated the whole time because nothing makes sense and none of the characters are acting in appropriate ways. I need to put my hair up because it's driving me crazy. So let's talk about what I have on the go, or like what I technically have open and on the go leading into our last month of the year. Reign and Ruin. This is an ebook that I'm reading through Kindle. I am loving it, and I'm about 50% of the way, and this is a book that the reading experience is like, I wish I could just like close my door and sit and read and avoid all of my responsibilities and just read this book. Like I just want to keep reading it. So really, really loving this. I'm also 50% of the way in Sword of Kagen. This died out just from like a mood. I wasn't necessarily in the mood. We were like really, really thick into heavy action, and that wasn't what I was in the mood for. But I am going to still finish that book. Sword of Kagen, 50% also ebook through Kindle. I'm about 20% of the way into The Fall Is All There Is by C.M. Kaplan, also ebook on Kindle. And this one, the writing is such a little bit just not what I was expecting, in that it's much more unique, and that is what I was looking for. But the viewpoint that we're getting is more chaotic than I think I'm in the mood for. It has a neurodivergent main character, and I think it's doing a good representation of what that experience could be like. But sometimes it's like reading from an anxiety perspective, where it's like sometimes like this is good representation, but it's bringing up anxiety because it's such good representation, and I can't read it right now, so it's not anxiety, but it's just like more of a chaotic internal experience than what I'm necessarily in the mood for. So again, still 20% of the way into that one. No, maybe I'm only 10% of the way into that one. I'm getting all, I just checked this right before I pulled this up, and now I'm forgetting it already. And then obviously also Legend of the Bright Wash, physical book, which is why it's going slow, but I would like to actually like prioritize that a little bit more. I'm going to be continuing my Kindle Unlimited subscription for the next little bit. So I'm also going to be putting my Everend subscription on hold. And I think that is everything that you need to know going into this next month. Let me know how November was for you, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day. Bye.